presentation unfolds tonight, if you think of questions, you're encouraged to use the Zoom chat feature if you have access to it, to address your question directly to Tom rather than to everyone. And then he'll sort through the questions and sort of be our moderator when we get to the discussion portion. If for some reason we lose our Zoom connection, which can certainly happen, we just ask that you use the same link to get back in, or the same phone number to get back in and re-enter it. We'll get you in and continue again after a few minutes. So without any further delay, we wish to open with a prayer. And for that, I'll call on our other host, Patty Kubala. Patty?
Good evening, everybody. This is a prayer for unity. Oh my God, unite the hearts of thy servants and reveal to them thy great purpose. May they follow thy commandments and abide in thy law. Help them, O God, in their endeavor, and grant them strength to serve thee. O God, lead them not to themselves, but guide their steps by the light of thy knowledge, and cheer their hearts with thy love. Verily, thou art their helper and their Lord. Baha'u'llah.
Thank you, Patty. And thank you all again for joining us. And now let me turn this over to Tom Kubala. Tom?
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us. I need to admit someone into the presentation, and I lost my cursor somewhere. Oh, here it is. Got it. All right. So what I usually do when we begin is to read these two paragraphs, a brief description of what Baha'is believe, in case you were wondering or wanted to be reminded. So throughout history, God has sent to humanity a series of divine educators known as manifestations of God, whose teachings have provided the basis for the advancement of civilization. These manifestations have included Abraham, Krishna, Zoroaster, Moses, Buddha, Jesus, and Muhammad. Baha'u'llah, the latest of these messengers, explained that the religions of the world come from the same source and are in essence successive chapters of one religion from God. Baha'is believe the crucial need facing humanity is to find a unifying vision of the future of society and of the nature and purpose of life. Such a vision unfolds in the writings of Baha'u'llah. Our presenter tonight is Caroline Juzenas. She is a healthcare professional from Racine, Wisconsin, and a Baha'i for 21 years. What changed her heart in realizing the truth and scope of racial injustice and oppression was Baha'u'llah's teaching of oneness. Some years ago, Caroline began to deeply study and meditate on oneness. Eventually, she began to see how oneness impacts everything. Carolyn began to see the difference of how she was treated as a white person and the atrocious injustices on Black souls. Yet we are one. The resulting painful cognitive dissonance helped begin her journey to look within herself, to listen and learn all she could from others, to remove the veils that still blind her in order to take action for justice against anti-Black racism. And with that, I'll turn it over to Caroline. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome.
And thank you, Nancy. Good evening, everyone. I would like to thank the Cedarburg Baha'i community for creating this space and the opportunity to be with you tonight. I also want to thank the authors of my source material, Dr. Derek Smith is a professor of literature and the chair of Africana Studies at Claremont McKenna College, and Barbara Talley, author, speaker, and poet. Also, the art you will see in this presentation is used with consent from the Green Acre Baha'i Learning Center, their Pupil of the Eye art exhibit. I will put links in the chat at the end of the presentation for both Dr. Smith's paper, where a lot of this material came from, and also the link for the art exhibit. It's wonderful. This talk is titled Vision for Humanity, the Crucial Role of People of African Descent. I will share a perspective on vision as it relates to humanity from a Baha'i perspective. Baha'u'llah, prophet founder of the Baha'i faith, has taught that humanity is one. What does that mean? That we are one. What is the oneness of humanity? Well, Baha'u'llah explains that we are all created from the same dust, and that no one, therefore, should exalt himself over the other. And that since we are all created from the same, from one same substance, we are all created from one same substance, it is incumbent to be even as one soul. And Baha'u'llah says, so that from our inmost being, the signs of oneness will be made manifest. Anti-Black racism in America has been called by the early central figures of the Baha'i faith as the most vital and challenging issue we face. And the injustices tragically continue as they have for centuries. These injustices of one subset of humanity towards the other cannot be reconciled with oneness. And we are all affected. In 2017, the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States wrote, "The tensions, divisions, and injustices that currently beset America are symptoms of a long-standing illness. The nation is afflicted with a deep spiritual disorder, manifest in a deeply ingrained racial prejudice." And they continue, as a result, millions of our fellow Americans subject to systemic injustices are prevented from making their full contributions to society. No one is immune to this disorder. We are all members of this society. We as a nation do not see oneness. There are divisions everywhere. We do not see the nobility, the sacredness, and the connectedness of every human being. And if we can't see this oneness, we can't see the sacredness and the nobility and the connectedness, then our vision is obscured. We cannot see. I'm going to share the screen time. Am I going to be able to do that? I think so. There we go. So this is from the Oxford English Dictionary. Vision, the state, the faculty or state of being able to see. But then take a look at the second definition, the ability to think about or plan the future with imagination or wisdom. So let's think about this for a minute. If humanity's vision is obscured, and if we can't see, How are we going to get out of this mess we've created? And what are our hopes for the future? There is hope. There is an answer. And as background to this, I wanted to just bring up some statistics I found. It is estimated that only 16%, 16% of the total world's population of 7.4 billion are white. And it's predicted that by 2060, only 10% of the world will be white. Yet white supremacy in America continues. This great imbalance to oneness is corrected in a powerful metaphor by Baha'u'llah. I'm going to share the screen again. In the late 19th century, Baha'u'llah likened people of African descent to the black pupil of the eye, surrounded by the white. In this black pupil is seen the reflection of that which is before it. And through it, the light of the Spirit shineth forth. And Baha'u'llah's eldest son, Abdul Baha, continued this metaphor of the pupil of the eye. He says, "Thou art like the pupil of the eye, which is dark in color, yet it is the fount of light and the revealer of the contingent world." So let's examine this metaphor. What does this mean? If you look at the anatomy of the eye, the pupil, which is the black center of which we see, it's the opening of the iris through which light passes. Light must come through the pupil in order for vision, for sight to happen. If the pupil does not exist, or if it is not centered, light cannot pass through. And in the anatomy of the eye, if the pupil has a film on it, if the pupil is overcome by white, which we know as cataracts, that person cannot see, or his vision is at the minimum obscured. So Baha'u'llah has given us this perfect metaphor for the vision of humanity. I'm going to share the screen again. Derek Smith, professor of literature and chair of Africana Studies at Claremont McKenna College, has authored a paper titled "Centering the Pupil of the Eye: Blackness, Modernity, and the Revelation of Baha'u'llah." This scholarly work argues that Baha'u'llah's elevating metaphor amounts to a forceful refutation of anti-Blackness, and thus a dismantling of one of modernity's pivotal ideologies. And this statement is huge, because we can think of a metaphor as, oh, that's nice. But anti-Blackness has continued for over 400 years, 400 years of slavery in America. But then before that, it goes on through Europe, and other countries and continents. So this idea and anti-Blackness was very much existing when Baha'u'llah declared this metaphor, when he revealed this metaphor. So this is something very significant. But what does it mean for us? If we center the pupil of the eye, people of African descent, if we center people of African descent, what happens to our vision? Humanity's vision returns. We see the oneness. The oneness becomes evidence. Baha'u'llah has written, when thou dost, quote, when thou dost strip the veils of illusion from the face of thine heart, the lights of oneness will be made manifest. End quote. We are one. We just can't see it. When we center the pupil of the eye and the light of the spirit shineth forth, we all benefit, for we are one. I'm going to share the screen one last time. And you know, when these lights, the light of the spirit, when I think of radiant lights, I think of Martin Luther King Jr., Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, Louis Gregory, Muhammad Ali, Jackie Robinson, Langston Hughes, Maya Angelou, George Washington Carver, Coralie Cook, Dizzy Gillespie, Bessie Coleman, James Baldwin, Ruby Bridges, Elsie Austin, Claudette Colvin, Medgar Evans, Sadie Oglesby, and Barack Obama. Can you imagine a future world with liberated capacity of people of African descent? And I think it's important to point out that to center does not mean to elevate. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, to center means to place in the middle. And so how do we do that? Centering people of African descent begins absolutely first with the ceasing of oppression. Then it requires the whites to step back, getting ourselves out of the way, getting ourselves out of the center. And we need to consciously work to remove the unconscious barriers that keep Black souls marginalized. They're marginalized, they're anywhere but in the middle. And think about this, any group that you see, any public group, where the majority are whites, where are those of African descent? They're on the outskirts. And when this happens, then humanity will be in balance. Then we will be whole. Then humanity will have vision. With the results of that vision, none other than, I believe, God's kingdom on earth. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. That was wonderful. It really helps to have this metaphor set before us into the center of our focus for the evening and for our discussion. We'll open the floor for your questions and your comments now, and I'm going to turn this over to Tom to moderate that.
Yeah.
And so
I'm looking for hands or for chat notes.
Caroline, I just wanted to mention that I love the part where you said those of the white race need to step back, step aside, get out of the center. I like that part. I mean, it's a mental and a physical thing, I think.
Right.
But I'm sorry, Judy, could you repeat that one more time?
Okay, I said I liked hearing you say that us white folks need to step aside and get out of the center. And I think of being in the center as both a mental phenomenon as well as a physical phenomenon.
It is amazing that we don't realize that we're in the center. Thank you, Judy.
Yes, Patty.
I just have a question for all of us. And it's pretty obvious in a way, but how do we, allow the pupil of the eye, our African or Black people of color to be in the center, and think about ways that we can do that. And one thing that I hadn't thought of in a long time, but I wanted to share this example. When Baha'is have elections, whether it's at the local level or any other level, if there's a tie between, any two people, automatically, if there is some minority, and in our country for sure, it would be people of color. And every time that is brought up as a reminder at the beginning of an election process, it just and it can also apply to any other minorities, like say if it's mostly men and there's a tie, if there's a woman and a man, the woman would get it, and so on. And again, it's a broader concept, but anyway, it's just interesting to think about that. And I'd like us to think about how can we, each one of us, and in what situations, try to apply this, to center, to get out of the center and let the pupil of the eye open up.
Kathy. You'll have to unmute. There you go.
I'm just going along with that same idea of voting. This was the first time in the directions for voting that I've seen this, where it talks about how you should think about all of the people within your community who would meet the criteria, and they had the criteria. I can't remember what it was exactly right now to repeat it, but who would meet the criteria. And then out of all those people that you prayerfully think about and think, who would meet that criteria, if there is somebody who is who needs to be centered out of all of those people, that's the person that you should individually choose, is the person who needs to be centered. So it's not even when there's a tie, it's in our prayerful consideration also of when we're individually voting.
Could I comment on that?
Sure, go right ahead, Shirlene.
I think the theme here is wonderful, and really it goes back to what Judy said about, removing ourselves, because if in an election we look towards a minority, that means that a white person or a person who's not a minority is not going to be in the spot. And it's that thinking that we have to remove ourselves before we can do this. Or that the result will be that a white will be displaced. And that makes it easier, I think, for us to step back. It's like if you have a full cup, you can't pour any more in. You have to empty the cup until you can it. So just the idea with the elections that think about that some who won't be in that spot. And that's very helpful, I found.
Shirlene.
Yeah, hi, friends. Thank you, Caroline. That was really a very beautiful presentation that you gave us this evening. A wonderful collection of materials, and I will probably steal it, which is the best compliment. But I wanted to talk about minority representation in the Baha'i community. It's not only in elections. And in fact, it states that if there is a minority, period, not just ties, but with committee appointments or anything of that nature, that those individuals, whether it's gender or age or race, that those individuals, we should be sure to include them, okay, in whatever thing it is, whether it's a committee assignment, to hear those voices. So what that means is when we talk about the vision of the Baha'i faith, right now we're talking about a white-black imbalance in the United States, right? However, in some countries, let's go to Africa for a minute. You guys would be in the minority. And in that instance, it would be incumbent upon the Baha'is in those communities to say, wait, we've got a white friend here. We need to make sure their voice is heard, their perspective is heard. So very, very, very broadly speaking, the vision of Baha'u'llah is to balance the imbalances that exist today. Just one in very broad terms, it's to create a balance, and it's an organic balance that changes and fluxes with the constitution of any neighborhood or assembly or whatever body it is, that you're thinking of. And I just wanted to make one comment about in response to Patty's great question. So how do we step aside? And stepping aside or allowing, I don't like that word because it sounds like one's giving permission, right? But to, oh, I had a good word, now I lost it, but an alternative, I thought. You see how difficult this is for all of us, right? We all kind of stumble over these things. But it's not about stepping aside so much as it is making room for the space of others whose voices are generally not welcomed, invited, or heard. So inviting that voice in the room, whether it's the only woman in a community, for example, or only man on a committee. That happens, the women are doing a lot in the Baha'i faith. Sometimes those men aren't there very often. So maybe it's that guy and allowing his voice to be heard. And again, see, I use the same word I didn't like, right? Allowing. But it also means to genuinely listen, because if that respect and genuine interest in what the person is saying, what they're offering, what they have to bring to the space is not really there, they will know. They will know. And that can also, that can be sometimes worse. So just a few thoughts on that. Thank you, friends.
Thank you, Shirlene. Dolores. You'll have to unmute yourself, Dolores.
Could you use the word encourage in what she just said? Would that be an appropriate term to use? I'm not sure. Instead of allowing.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Can I speak to that for a second? I was doing this, and just so you guys know, this is a way you may see Black people doing this in spaces, and it comes from attending spoken word poetry things where you don't want to clap, but you want to acknowledge your support of something. So you do this, and it's called finger snapping. So I was finger snapping because I was so excited about what you just said, Dolores. It was perfect. Thank you so much.
Oh, good.
So I wasn't trying to speak. I was like, oh, yes, that's wonderful.
Good.
Dan. Oh, I thought you had your hand up. Are there any other questions for Caroline? We'll let you sit just for a minute or so in case. Oh, yeah, David, go right ahead.
I just want to bring up one little thing I've mentioned before. I am not white. This napkin may be white. I'm just a little lighter shade of brown. And I have seen no Black people. They are very dark brown, but it's a wonderful, diverse palette that we have for humanity. And this is the true oneness, that race is a creation of people that were really, they were Christians, but they were not living the ideals of Christianity. They created this terrible myth of a superior race that had achieved all these things, which had not, almost all of their achievements were actually from other parts of the world. Paper and gunpowder came from China. Steel came from India and from the Middle East. All of these things that we think are part of whiteness or Western culture came from this wonderful coming together of cultures, which we call the Islamic era, the Islamic golden age. But it was all short-circuited in the 1500s, and I would encourage everyone to investigate from 1492 to about 1620, which is kind of a silent era in most history books, but a lot happened in that era. And that's when people of Europe came to the ascendancy. Before that, they were the backward ones. And we have to really realize that we are coming to recognize the true balance of humanity when we give Black, Native American, Asian, all of the people that have been left out so much, their rightful voice in the shaping of the world.
Thank you, David. Yes, Caroline.
I just want to respond to Dave. Thank you, Dave, for bringing up the idea that race is created. And it goes back to, in America, it goes back about 400 years, but this is a really great opportunity to promote a wonderful course that gives really the historic details. So because we can hear a lot of things, but to actually learn from the historic documents themselves. And that's the Wilmette Institute, which is open to everyone. And that is, they have a course, The History of Anti-Black Racism. And that starts in October. And I would really recommend that to anyone. And I don't know if Kathy maybe could put information in the chat on that, but I think.
Thank you. Thank you. Kathy Werzer writes in the chats that she likes the use of the term their rightful voice. And if you wanted to elaborate on that, Kathy, please go ahead.
Sorry, I was just trying to find the Wilmette Institute link. Yeah, I just, you know, we talk about, I think that's another, well, from oppression, right? We have to understand that that people of color, people of African descent, that all along it was their rightful voice, and it's been because of white oppression that has not been heard.
Right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else?
Well, I was just reflecting on Patty's question again about how we are going to personally deal with this. And I'm thinking of myself being in the rooms where there are many, maybe people of different color than myself, and maybe they are a minority, but being sure that, again, as someone mentioned, to listen and be sure they're being heard. And if you think they're not being heard, ask them what they think. Like Tanduran and Jose, I guess, ask them what they might be thinking. And I've experienced this in some groups where that person will then speak, but everyone else will seem to ignore that person. So you might want to then follow up with, I understand what you're saying is this, am I correct? Just keep it going with that person. And sometimes it's a woman, the only woman. Sometimes it's the only man, as was mentioned. But I think being very proactive is what we need to start being.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Anyone else? Yeah.
Does it look like that's it, Tom?
I-
Or do you see any other?
Well, somebody liked Judy's strategy. I think, oh, Sherlyn loves it.
I think we should all practice this.
Yeah.
In our children's classes, we sometimes do this.
Yeah, yeah.
So we have options. So
Mhm.
I guess our time is winding down then for tonight.
Patty Kabbalah, please.
Oh, Patty.
Oh,
I can be loud in many ways. Anyway, I would like, I mean, it's not even 1:45. I would like to hear some stories because we're from a lot of different communities. And Sherlyn, I'd like to know what community you're from because I haven't met you in person, maybe just on Zoom. Oh, Madison, Judy spoke for you. Anyway, I would love to hear stories of what's happening, whether in your neighborhood, in your family, in your community, or in the workplace, because I know people have been, attempting things and learning things for well, hopefully more than decades. But anyway, if anyone has stories, I would love to hear them.
Patty, about this issue, you mean the race unity?
Right, like what are we doing
Mhm.
to rectify, a situation that's out of balance, that is harmful, and that holds us back from hearing different ideas that we might hear and that might be better if we just allowed it.
Yeah. Can
Lynn.
Okay. Hi, Patty. Nice to meet you. And anyone else here I haven't met. I moved here. I'm in Wisconsin, and I moved back here after a 20-year hiatus back on the East Coast. I have my daughter, one of my daughters, and my grandchildren here. And I am in Middleton, Wisconsin with Judy Morgan, right next door to Ellie over in Madison. So that's where I am. What's going on, or what are some things that are going on? I've been involved. I'm going to promote two things, okay? But I'm going to do it very quickly because I think the other stories are just as important. But I'm involved in two nationwide programs. I say nationwide because people from all over the country are engaged in them on Zoom. And one of them is the Copper to Gold Unlearning Racism program. Myself and Susan Crossley will be coming in October to talk about that. But that program is where and Ellie's a graduate, where you actually come together in a safe space where white people are centered, because it's to help you identify what are those things that are racist that you may not know. How do you handle certain situations, that kind of thing. And we approach that material in two ways. One from the principles in the Baha'i faith, and then secondly from current social science research on these issues. So we kind of bring these things together. And so it's interpersonal. It's about what you want to do to improve yourself, be more aware, of your interactions, and feel more confident in your interactions when you are with people of color. It's very important that you feel comfortable in your own skin, because again, kind of know when someone's uncomfortable. We all do, even though we don't know why. And and then the second thing, I do a series every second and fourth Saturday called Racial Healing, Racial Justice, a Baha'i inspired series. And again, thank you guys. This again is another space. We usually have around 60 to 100 people. Copper to Gold groups are like about 20 people, they're small groups. But there we have anywhere from 60 to 100 or so individuals, again, from around the country, who come to listen to presentations on various topics that are related to racial healing and racial justice. So I invite you all to both of those. I'll put my email address in the chat. So if you're interested in being notified about those things, I can, send that information out to you. So those are two things that are going on, and you'll get to meet a lot of really cool people. Thank you.
Thank you. Caroline.
Hi, thank you, Sherlyn. I wanted to just point out, so this removing ourselves from what that was in the talk tonight, removing ourselves from the center. That's what Copper to Gold helps. And I know that Sherlyn is going to be a speaker on this in the Cedarburg topics of our times, and I do believe that their topic is going to be something very similar to that. So keep an eye out. Yeah.
It'll be October 8th, Friday evening.
Caroline, you mentioned Barbara Talley. Barbara Talley has a couple, maybe once a month or a couple times a month. She has something like Sherlyn's talking about, where she has speakers on this topic also, and they're wonderful as well. If you just Google her name, I'm sure you'll find
Barbara Talley, I couldn't identify a single source because there are so many that she has contributed to. And there is the website worldembracing.net, which was her creation. She has multiple, there are multiple events that she holds, but it seems that she is always shining that light, so that for me at least, I get it. It shines that light on my path so I understand. And for this talk, what was really helpful to me is that Barbara Talley was interviewed by Baha'i.chat. And it's a 3-video series, part 1, part 2, part 3. And it's Barbara Talley and friends. So it's the idea of this pupil of the eye. Why is this now becoming such a really big deal with everything that's happened in the last couple of years? And it's Barbara Talley and friends. She's a very selfless soul, and she invites pupil of the eye, people of African descent, to explain how it affects them. How has this, and most of this idea has changed their life into realizing many things. And I'm going to find that and put that in the chat, because I think for Baha'is especially, they would be very interested in this. But I think it'd be wonderful for anybody.
Caroline, is that the series where at the end, because she's a poet, where she reads one of her poems? Anyway, it's unbelievably, it's wonderful. It's about race unity. It's maybe I can find that.
She is an amazing person. I feel very I cannot speak to Barbara Talley's talents. They're in my scope.
Yeah, if I could add to that, she does several multitude of things. So they have gatherings for white people, gatherings for Black people, again, talking about race, gatherings where they come together to talk about race. She does a Native American presentation, I think once a month. She has presentations only for people from the African diaspora. So she does a number of things. But worldembracing.net, I think you can just type that in, or Foundation Hall will bring it up, and you can see the wide variety of things. And it's throughout the day, the course of the day, during the day, in the evening. So it's a 24/7 kind of thing, practically, and a great resource. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, Dolores.
I've lived in various areas in my life. I was raised on a farm in South Dakota. And of course, there it was the Native Americans that some looked on as being a problem. Now, if there was a Native American family living around us or in the tiny town down the road, they would call them good people. That's the highest compliment you would get in the farming area in South Dakota, is they're good people. However, the ones that lived on those reservations, which they didn't know, of course, they viewed those differently. There's a whole history as to how they got there, of course.
Yeah.
When we lived in Milwaukee, well, I'll tell you a story about my two little girls. It's almost embarrassing. Lovely Black family lived next to us, the Robinsons. They had a little boy, Robbie, and we had two little girls, Lisa and Darcy, who were just a bit older than Robbie. They played together all the time, ate with one, at each other's house, all of this. And they were out in the yard one day playing. And anyway, I heard Darcy, our spirited younger child, say, okay, Robbie, today I'm going to be the master and you're going to be the slave. I have never moved so quickly in my life. I just went out and I said, we'd change the subject. And then that night we had a long talk. And a couple of days later, I looked out there and Darcy had made a crown for Robbie when they were playing together. So different things, different areas of the country, but right.
Yes, Carolyn. You'll have to unmute. Carolyn, can you unmute?
Yeah. Am I unmuted? I am.
Yes,
Hey,
yes.
I see the light. So one of the things that we've been experiencing that's been really fun is to gather with folks from different cultures and backgrounds and races to gardening. And so in our on our property, we kind of opened up our whole land to homeless shelter. And so they came and they gardened, and working with them in gardening and talking, you would not believe the elevated conversations that arose. And such, you know, it was such a way to work shoulder to shoulder and kind of bond together. And sadly, we did this before COVID. So now, you know, we haven't done it. We're still waiting for the time to have it open up. But since then, I've been noticing a lot of folks talking about gardening, urban gardening, and connecting, finding social spaces where we can have conversations and just bonding together. And of course, like Caroline, thank you for your talk and the importance of vision. And those visions come from different spaces, you know, and involve different topics, you know, like how we care for the planet. And the folks, the conversations that arose, you know, like the food that they miss, you know, or the grandmother or grandfather that they gardened with when they were young, and just all kinds of beautiful ways to bond. So that's our learning. Very diverse social spaces to have conversation.
Thank you, Carolyn.
All right. I think we are winding down now. And our time is about up. We hope you'll reflect on what you've heard and think about how it might apply in your own life, in your own situation, and with the people around you, and continue to seek answers to any questions that have come to mind in the middle of it all. Tonight's talk marked the continuation of a series of presentations we started last month, which focuses and will continue to focus on topics related to what, as Caroline shared, Baha'is view as America's most challenging issue, the elimination of racism. So for our next talk on September 24th, we expect speakers Carolyn Paik and Jenny Wanasek to talk about how to talk to children about race. And then on October 8th, Sherlyn Stevens and Susan Crossley will be speaking on reaching justice through personal transformation. What is our role in achieving justice? In the Baha'i faith, we are trying to bring people together and build relationships and find unity for social change, social action and change. And we do this through small consultative study groups, through children's classes and junior youth empowerment groups, and also through collective prayer and fellowship in interfaith gatherings. And of course, we see lots of individual initiatives, as you've heard some of them tonight, such as these talks as well that Tom and Patty started for us. They're designed to enhance understanding and strengthen bonds. Excuse me. You're invited to participate with the Baha'is and the Friends in any of our activities anytime. And please feel free to contact me at my number there on the screen. Excuse me, or Patty Kubala for more information about those activities. Or if you just want to delve more deeply into the Baha'i faith itself, you can find information by going online to www.baha'i.org. Excuse me. You can also email the Cedarburg Baha'is at bahaicedarburg@gmail.com. Thank you all once again for joining us tonight. Your participation and your questions and your sharings always make it better. We hope to see you next time. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you so much. It was wonderful.